If you haven't heard about the Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. The Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it's easy to be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you very much.
Wow, what a year 2020 has been for wrestling itself. I mean, we've gone from the beginning of the year in January, where Drew McIntyre won the 2020 Royal Rumble match, to him losing to now 14-time champion Randy Orton. Monumental career this guy's had throughout this past year. Wow. Welcome to a debut episode of Gotta Hav'Heart Wrestling Podcast. Your host, Jamel Holness. It's going to be good. We're going to talk about first, we're going to talk about, in my mind, a memorable, infamous match, which is near and dear to my heart, that has passed. We're going to be talking about the road to the Survivor Series of this year. We'll talk about rumored innuendos in wrestling today, news, rumors that's been going on throughout the scenes of WWE and AEW as well. AEW is a rising and upcoming company by Tony Khan, doing really good. So yes.
And we begin with our first segment, introduction to my podcast. Gonna tell you a little bit about myself here and how I got into what today is wrestling extravaganza. Basically, we can call it like that. Of course, it's all started when I was a young Jamel, of course, growing up. Then the sole reason why I will tell everybody this, how I got into wrestling in the first place, my mother. My mother, her name is Tanisha. Of course, lovely woman, nicest woman you'll ever meet. My mom. So, thing is, I can remember just sitting with her, and the first event I believe that I can remember is so far back is watching WrestleMania 12. Not knowing what was going on or what was even happening on the television at that point. Everything was so standard definition at the time. I can remember these two guys fighting for a very, very long time. Not sure why they were fighting, why it was called wrestling, what was the point of it watching it. See, the thing is, you know, it's not just wrestling, it's sports entertainment at that too. And the best part about it is that you're gonna get a lot of different things when it comes to sports entertainment. You're gonna get the drama, the horror, the suspense, the mystery, the the comedic, the action, all rolled up into one big gigantic show. And the show that I was watching, pay-per-view, mind you, that I was watching with my mother that night was WrestleMania 12 that took place on March 31st, 1996. Yes, I know that's a far way back. That was 24 years ago. And it's crazy how I still remember it because, that match, that long match that went about an hour, 2 minutes, and some change, was between legendary Shawn Michaels, the challenger for Bret the Hitman Hart, with the WWE Championship on the line, supposedly was called the 60-minute, the first ever 60-minute Iron Man match. That's crazy. 60 minutes. These two guys are fighting for. Much less, you know, nowadays, it's considered to have a 30-minute long match. That's considered to be a long match. But back in the day, if you can go 60 minutes with somebody toe to toe, not get a pinfall decision or a submission decision, count out or to disqualify by any means necessary, that's amazing. That is what you call the granddaddy of all granddaddy matches. That is crazy. I mean, these two guys go back and forth, not knowing what's still going on because I'm a baby, and it's just like, wow. I couldn't take my eyes off it. I was so mesmerized how quickly these two guys can wrestle for a long period of time. It is very, very crazy. So yeah, that's how I got into wrestling in the first place. And ever since then, I've always watched it on, and that was when there was the new generation era. Leading into the Attitude Era a little bit within 1997 into 1998 as well. And I always remember my mom talking about her going to an event. And what she did, she went to a few. She even went to a Monday Night Raw in 1997, where she would see guys like Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret the Hitman Hart, The Undertaker, Psycho Sid, Vader, Mankind in person. Very lucky. Very, very lucky. My mom is blessed to have gone to those events, and have pictures taken. And I can always remember this one photograph that still had to this very, very day. And it's a little story here, but I'm going to put it out for the whole world to hear. She had taken a road trip all the way down to New Jersey to meet Adam Copeland, whose wrestling name is Edge. In my mind, one of the greatest legends of all time right now, even after wrestler. Hopefully, he does come back and kick Randy Orton's ass. You heard it from me. Nobody else says, but I'm saying that kick Randy Orton's ass. It's astonishing. It really is. But yeah, that's how I got to wrestling in the first place. It is pretty crazy. Also, I want to take this time now to give a shout out to my Cumberland Farms team. I work at Cumberland Farms as a store associate, guest store associate. They go to my boss, the greatest manager, Terry. So you heard it here. If Terry listen to this, give a big shout out to you and all the crew there too. All you guys are my family. It's been a really good 3 months, well, 4 months as of next week, and gonna be with you guys for a long time. I'm not going anywhere. I'm sticking with you guys. Not going anywhere. Love you guys. All right, let's continue here with. We're gonna talk about a lot of firsts. The first time we got into wrestling, which we've already talked about. The first time where I went to a wrestling event, which is pretty cool. The first time I bought like merchandising, sales, and all that. Even the first time I saw my first televised event, non pay-per-view, of course, is as much as I can remember. I'm gonna just let it out here on this debut episode podcast. I'm gonna try to make it as really interesting as possible, get you guys to feel what I feel about the way I love wrestling, and be able to connect it out there to the world as well. So, with that being said, let's dive right in. See, the first time I actually, went to a wrestling event, I can remember is the Monday Night Raw of 2013. I think it was April 20, I mean, not 2013, 2003. It was in Boston, of course. I was living in Boston at the time. And I moved from there as well. But that's the main wrestling show I can remember. It was a Monday Night Raw. It was in Boston, and I don't remember much from that night. But what I do remember is when Stone Cold Steve Austin confronted by Eric Bischoff, who was the then general manager of Monday Night Raw at that time. It's pretty crazy to think about this, is because it's like, you're sitting there, you're in the middle section of what used to be called the Fleet Center, is now called the TD Garden in Boston. I swear to God, that I think that arena changing it 3 times, from the Boston Garden to the Fleet Center to the TD Bank North Garden and now to the TD Garden. Maybe I'll change this name again. Who knows? But from one I can remember that night was Steve Austin and Eric Bischoff get into a confrontation, and the fans just booing, walking out. While Eric Bischoff is talking, this is pretty crazy. It was so surreal. Me, I think I was, let's see, it was before my 10th birthday. So I was about 9 years old. But it was so cool just to be out there past bedtime, having school the next day, because mind you, this is a Monday night. This is a live broadcast, Monday Night Raw. What then used to be Spike TV, which is now Raw. It's on the USA Network. So that night, like, we saw the debut of this tag team, La Resistance, with Rene Dupuis and Rob Conway, or Sybille Ranier, whatever his name is. But, a French Canadian tag team. Me being part Canadian as well. So it was pretty cool to see that. It was really cool. But like I said, that was my first time going to the actual wrestling event. It was so cool. I wouldn't take that for granted. Like, you always, let me tell you this. People always tell you this. You're always going to remember your first. It's crazy, but you did. I don't remember all my firsts, but this one is going to be in my heart forever. April 2003, I went to a live Monday Night Raw in the Fleet Center that night in Boston, Massachusetts. It's pretty surreal. It really is. So yeah, I can remember. Actually, the first T-shirt, I think it was a Austin T-shirt too. Yeah, no, it wasn't the Austin 316. I wished I would have been my first T-shirt, my first merchandise I ever purchased, but it wasn't. It was a Stone Cold Retro T-shirt, and I believe it had the other side Jackass. Yes, the other side Jackass on the back of it, which is so damn cool. Like them having T-shirts like that, and think it's wrestling company, sports entertainment. Like you gotta admit, that's pretty badass. It's pretty badass. And mind you, Stone Cold Steve Austin being the most popular superstar ever in WWE's history. Yeah, I mean ever in WWE's history. I think he was even more popular than Hulk Hogan. And, Hulk Hogan dominated the 80s in wrestling, of course. But it's so surreal. Stone Cold Steve Austin, merchandise sales through the roof, probably made the company tons and tons of millions of dollars at the time. So yeah, that's the first wrestling event I ever went to, and the first wrestling merchandise I've ever purchased. Pretty damn cool, memorable night, one of the best nights of my life. Not gonna take that night for granted or anything like that. So yeah. Oh man, just remember that just gives me flashbacks. So alrighty. So let's see. I would say like the first non-televised event I watched from my home back then in Boston. I think it would have to be a Monday Night Raw in 1998. Actually, get this. This was probably the Monday Night Raw where fans had really tuned in to the Monday Night War between WCW's Monday Nitro. Big war between Monday Night Raw and Monday Nitro. Pretty surreal. The night that first time ever that Mr. McMahon, which his name is Mr. McMahon, Mr. McMahon go one-on-one against Stone Cold Steve Austin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania that night. We saw a lot. We saw a lot that night. It's pretty surreal. But I remember watching that main event, Austin having one hand tied behind his back with a rope. It's really, and out comes Dude Love, who we haven't seen since '97. Mind you, there's history between Dude Love and Austin. They were the tag team champions in the summer of 1999 after originally Stone Cold Steve Austin was tag team champ with the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, who had to give up the championship due to an injury. Kind of sucks, but yes. And we Austin do love him. Mr. Man involved as well. So I'm thinking like something's gonna happen. Something's bad's gonna happen. Dulove's gonna attack one of these two guys. And then we see Dulove just trying to get to Mr. McMahon with the claw, ends up pinning on Austin. I was confused. I was like, what in the bleep is going on? You know? I didn't swear because I was, 5 years old at the time, but what in the heck is going on? You know? So I'm like, and my mom had to explain it to me, I guess, at that time, this was gonna happen, and I'm pretty sure the WWE, it wasn't a WWE at the time, but I'm gonna say this, not gonna say the other thing due to copyright. The WWE at the time was going within the Austin Do Love direction, evolving the WWE Championship. So it's pretty surreal. That was a really good episode. That episode was, like I said, it had ratings in favor of WWF Monday Night Raw that night, and made the fans tune in from watching WCW's Nitro, you know? So, pretty great night for that too, also. And I'm talking about first. I actually had went to my first NXT event. It's a little off topic a little bit, but since we're talking about first, we might as well put it in this episode. I went to my first NXT event down in North Kingston, Rhode Island. It was about 3 years ago. This is pretty recent. I was 24 years old. Front row seats to NXT event at the URI in, in South Kingston, Rhode Island, to see the Undisputed Era battle. Let's see if I can remember this. If I can remember this was against the group called Sanity, led by Eric Young, and pretty good. Like I think at that point, NXT was making this mark, even though they did, a couple years prior to it in the year 2014 with their first ever takeover revolution or arrival, you know, arrival. So it's pretty damn surreal how far NXT had come. You know, we say that like NXT is just a developmental territory for the rookies, for the superstars of tomorrow, but I will not stress this enough that NXT has proven, even at last year's 2019 Survivor Series event in Chicago, Illinois, they have proven that they are just as equal as the superstars of Raw and SmackDown as well. So anytime there's anything to talk about when it comes to NXT, I will praise the shit out of NXT just because those guys in there are making their own ground. They are breaking that glass ceiling. They are proving that we can hang with the bigger legendary stars of yesterday. Like I feel like WWE is future secure with NXT indefinitely, no matter what, you know. So it's pretty damn surreal, pretty damn cool at that too. And also, I want to talk about another first here, another first, which is pretty cool. Also, the first ever Hell in a Cell match. I saw that match in person, not in person, but that night when it happened on pay-per-view. In Your House, Bad Blood, Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker. And that was the first ever Hell in a Cell match that night. Man, oh man, what can I say? A lot. The way that match went down from start to finish, lasting about 30 minutes, I swear to God, I never saw Shawn Michaels take an ass kicking like he did that night against The Undertaker. And mind you, that was the second match these two I had one-on-one on pay-per-view. The first time happened a month previously at In Your House Ground Zero. That took place on September 9th, 1997. We had In Your House Bad Blood, October 5th, 1997, the first ever Hell in a Cell match. We saw chair shots. We saw power drive on steel steps. We saw Shawn Michaels beating up a cameraman. We saw him flying through the ropes and crashing through the Undertaker into the cell itself. We saw the match taken outside the cell. We saw Shawn Michaels' face rammed into the cell by the Undertaker, both scaling to the top of the cell. A backdrop to Shawn Michaels on top of the cell. We saw a lot that night. Probably one of the most infamous moments of the match was Shawn Michaels dangling from the side of the cage and crashing through the expansion announce table that night. I was like, oh my god. Shawn Michaels is one bloody mess. He's battered. He's bruised. You think he's gonna lose the match? Undertaker might as well just give him a tombstone and get the 1, 2, 3. And taking it back inside the steel known as Hell in a Cell inside the cage, getting hit with possibly the hardest chair shot I have ever seen and heard. My oh my, like Shawn Michaels got a huge ass kicking that night. He really did. He really did. Now you're thinking, okay, Undertaker's gonna win. He's gonna win. Tombstone coming out. Bam! All of a sudden the lights go out. And the debut, probably the most infamous debut ever in WWE's history, that monster Kane, going as Glenn Jacobs in real life, but Kane debuting, ripping his off the door, looking his brother in the eyes, has his fire come off all. Well, actually, no. 3 turnbuckles, even though it's technically supposed to be 4. Don't know what happened to the fourth turnbuckle, but you know. And look at him flipping his brother upside down and tombstone his own brother. Shawn Michaels crawls inch by inch on the Undertaker and getting the 1, 2, 3. Wow. I was in shock. Mind you, Shawn Michaels got the biggest ass kicking and he's the winner. He defeated the Undertaker in the first ever Hell in a Cell match. That is just crazy. It really is. But it's like, Jesus Christ, it is. You know? For that, a lot happened that pay per view. We also saw, Bret the Hart, the reigning defending WWF champion that night, teaming with his brother in law's British Bulldog, defeating the Patriot and Vader. Which also, that was a good entertaining match itself. That was a tag team flag on a pole match. When the other team get their other opponent's country's flag and have the national anthem singing throughout the arena that night in St. Louis, Missouri. Man, what a night! That's gonna be one of the history making pay-per-views, the history making match, and the history making debut of one Monster King. That is total crazy. Well, those are the first for that, and we'll be back with you. All right, we are back. The segment I wanted to talk about here is the events have been that so far have been leading up to the 2020 Survivor Series event. Mind you, Survivor Series itself is a Thanksgiving tradition that has lasted since inception since 1987, where we saw Team Hulk Hogan versus Team Andre the Giant. But wow, if I had to talk about, if someone asked me, what is the greatest moment in Survivor Series history? There's too many. There's too many great moments. It is crazy. We can talk about the moment where in 1994 we saw The Undertaker taking Yokozuna, put him in a double wide, double deep casket in San Antonio, Texas, with Chuck Norris. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Norris as the special enforcer to make sure no interference had happened in that match, where it happened previously at the 1994 Rumble that took place here in Providence, Rhode Island. Or we can even say the moment where I guess you all people know Dwayne The Rock Johnson debuted at the 1996 Survivor Series in Madison Square Garden with the funny looking outfit and the cheap Jerry curl haircut and that ridiculous smile. Okay, let's just maybe forget that. But that night, The Rock proved himself that he did belong in the WWF that night. Or we could talk about, oof, well, this is a infamous moment. How the time match between Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hart happened at the 1997 Star Series in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, the most beautiful city in the world, in my opinion. And how Bret Hart, yes, got screwed that night, losing the W Championship and making his exit from the company of the WWE. Or we can even talk about the next year, following when The Rock defeated Mankind, was probably the most fixed tournament yet. People, you can argue me about this. The 1980 Survivor Series Deadly Games tournament was the most fixed tournament ever. Like, I cannot stress this enough. That tournament was built to have The Rock win his first WWE Championship. Mind you, 2 years into his wrestling career as well. Thanks to the McMahons, of course. Or we can talk about the 2001 Survivor Series. Probably the biggest Survivor Series of all time, the most important, where the whole company of the WWE went against the defective company of the WCW ECW Alliance that night. We won, thank God. WWE's in business. Unfortunately for WCW and ECW, they would have to close their doors forever. And this making WWE the top wrestling company in the world. Whew. Oh man. I mean, we had Survivor Series too, where we went back to MSG and saw the first ever Elimination Chamber match. We could talk about Survivor Series Talent 5 where the first time Raw and SmackDown went head to head. We could talk about 2008 Survivor Series where we saw the return of John Cena defeating Chris Jericho to win the World Heavyweight Championship. We can talk about the 2011 Survivor Series, the 25th anniversary of that event, where we saw John Cena team up with The Rock to take on Awesome Truth. Never before, never again. We can talk about the 2012 Survivor Series. We saw the debut of the awesome greatest faction of all time, featuring Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, The Shield, making their mark and letting WWE know that they're here. They've arrived. Man, so many good ones to Survivor Series history. It's so much to like name, it really is. Like, wow. I cannot stress this enough. It is pretty amazing how important the Survivor Series is. Let me tell you something. It's like the match itself. We have the 5-on-5 traditional Survivor Series elimination matchup. Mind you, the rules of the match are stated if if both teams are set of 4-4 or 5-on-5. We also have started out with 5-on-5, which a couple years later in the 90s has switched to 4-on-4, where it's switched back to now 5-on-5, at least nowadays. The team members have to fight each other and fight the other opposing team members, eliminate them one by one until the opponent's teams completely eliminated, and the winners of the match would be the survivors, or if there's one person remaining for that team, become the sole survivor. Remember that word soul, one word, as mentioned on the Not Sam Wrestling podcast, which can be seen on the WWE Network. Sign up for the WWE Network and get your first month free for 30 days. But yeah, that match itself is probably a groundbreaking match. You don't know what's gonna happen or what's gonna happen to your team, what's gonna happen to you. It could be a 2-on-3, or front two, or some one time in the past we've seen either a 5-on-1 situation in which actually there's actually one time where that one person will eliminate the whole entire team and become the sole survivor. Unbelievable, right? It is crazy. It really is. Like I cannot stress this enough about how important the Survivor Series event is. And mind you, it's a Thanksgiving tradition. It really is. Like if you ever were to watch the Survivor Series, I think you know, probably watch it over football or basketball because it's really freaking interesting. You don't know what's going to happen. It's a very unpredictable night. Very unpredictable. So, eventually with the Survivor Series, we saw this past Sunday how Sasha Banks defeated Bailey to become the new SmackDown champion, get her sweet revenge. I was happy about that. Oh man, we saw how the draft affected the whole thing, which led to the New Day going from SmackDown to Raw with the Tag Team Champion, and the Street Profits going from Raw to SmackDown with the Tag Team Championship. Unfortunately, on the Raw episode, they did have to switch championships to make sure that neither brand's champion would go to the opposing shows, of course. But I mean, this is crazy. Survivor Series also sets up for these dream matches if you're Raw versus SmackDown. I mean, take a look what we've got coming up Survivor Series Sunday, November 22nd. We have the Street Profits, the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, going against the Raw Tag Team Champions, the New Day. First time ever. These two teams have never met before in a traditional tag team matchup, but it's going to happen Sunday, November 22nd. Also, we got the new SmackDown champion Sasha Banks going up against the unstoppable fourth Asuka. They said nobody's ready for Asuka. I think Sasha's going to find out tonight at the Survivor Series. These two women I met before in the past, and it's been a classic from when they met this past summer at SummerSlam back in August. I think we're definitely going to see who is the most dominant woman in WWE between those two, and the dominant women's champion. That match I'm excited to see. And for probably one of the champion main events, the new WWE champion Randy Orton will be facing the Universal Champion from SmackDown, Roman Reigns. These two have a lot of history with each other too. Not denying that. They've gotten wins over each other. Mostly Roman Reigns has the win-loss record against Randy. But keep in mind, this is not the same Roman Reigns that we know from before in the past. This is a totally different Roman Reigns. Mind you, when he was supposedly supposed to wrestle Goldberg for the Universal Championship Wrestlemania this year, due to the whole COVID outbreak, had to take him out and took time away from WWE to spend time with his family to make sure that his health stayed on track. Which is all good. I'm not denying that at all. As I can suspect most wrestlers are on the road about 300 plus days a year. That's a lot of time away from your family itself. So whatever time that you could find to spend with your family, do other things outside the company, and just take care of your health itself is very, very important. I would encourage that to any wrestler out there that can do that. So big praise for Roman Reigns for putting his family first and his health first before his career. We see him come back at SummerSlam, the moment where the Fiend defeated the Monster Among Men, Braun Strowman, for the Universal Championship. The following week at WWE's Payback pay-per-view, that triple threat match, which literally saw the entire ring imploded from the suplex between Braun Strowman and the Fiend. That's a bustable combined weight of almost 800 pounds now, top rope coming down to the ring, and yeah, the whole entire ring imploded. It's crazy. It really is crazy. It's the way it sounds. If people have the chance to go back, look at that moment, look at that match, because I've seen rings implode before between two big super heavyweights, but this one takes the cake. This shit was downright insane. Very, very insane. Like, wow. Man, Roman Reigns coming in at the very last minute, signing that contract. And mind you, people wonder what the hell is the relationship between Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns himself? You got to go back. Go back in time. Mind you, Paul Heyman is very close with the Inoue family, from generation to generation, to the Wild Samoans, to Rikishi Fatu, to the Usos, to Dwayne The Rock Johnson, now to Roman Reigns. Indeed, this is no rumored innuendo, but Paul Heyman is very closely known in our family. That's been out there for years. I think everybody knows that, by now. But yeah, like Roman Reigns coming at the very last moment of that match at Payback, getting it to 1, 2, 3, and just like that, he arrived, kicked ass, and left as the Universal Champion. Pretty surreal, isn't it? This is a whole new Roman Reigns. This is one badass Roman Reigns. You can't really call him a good guy. You can't really call him a bad guy. You just call him the guy, the man on top right now on SmackDown as Universal Champion. This is where it gets emotional. We saw Jey Uso win a Fatal 4 match on SmackDown in September to get a title shot against his own cousin Roman Reigns at the Clash of Champions pay-per-view. Mind you, if you were to go back and saw how this whole match came about and saw how the whole match went down in Clash of Champions, you'll probably be shocked and all. It'll be too hard to watch. Probably have to turn away. It's gonna make your stomach turn itself. I never seen, even though it's a sports team, but I never seen a man unleash that kind of punishment on his own flesh and blood, like I saw Roman Reigns did. And what would even be elevated for worse for there, Jey Uso had lost that night. And Roman Reigns was declared the tribal chief. Keyword, tribal chief, the leader, the head of the table, the leader of the pack, the leader of the family, the leader of the generation to come, even in the future. Roman Reigns is the top dog. Now, mind you here, we went towards Hell in a Cell where Jey Uso will get another title shot, but this time inside the structure itself. And adding the stipulation that somebody has to say, I quit. What's more embarrassing than make your opponent say, I quit? Those two most devastating words heard around the world. Man, that Hell in a Cell match that went down that night, oh man. It kind of made me shed a couple tears that night. And this is recent. This was this past Sunday, October 25th. Like, I'll be damned. I will be damned. Roman Reigns dominated at least 95% of that matchup. Took a lot of referees, a lot of officials to try to break it up. But even Jimmy Uso couldn't help him when he was caught by Roman Reigns into a sleeper hold, forcing Jey Uso to quit. And Roman Reigns walking up the entranceway. And surprisingly, this is what kind of shocked me. Alpha and Sika of the Wild Samoans tag team from way back in the 70s appearing at this event, acknowledging Roman Reigns as the tribal chief and the head poncho of the family. This is pretty freaking real. This is where shit just got real. It really got real now. Now you have Alpha and Sika involved in this now. Like, what the hell's gonna happen? I don't know. We have to really tune into SmackDown. Like, it's really pretty crazy. So, oh man, I can't talk about that. But like I said, Randy Orton, the WWE champion. We know Randy's accomplishments in WWE dates back all the way till SummerSlam 2004 in Toronto, Canada, where he became the youngest world champion that night. Pretty surreal. The youngest world champion at the age of 24. Mind you, Randy Orton is probably the youngest. Well, not the youngest, but one of the youngest champions. And to win the world championship at the age of 24, that is freaking huge. And to win it in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, at a major event like SummerSlam itself, you know, it's one of those sporting moments in WWE's history. It really is. And to go on championship after championship, United States champion, Intercontinental champion, tag team champions, two-time Royal Rumble winner, Money in the Bank. Randy Orton has freaking done it all. Legend after legend after legend he has put away. There's a reason why he's called the Legend Killer. He's called the Viper. He's called the Apex Predator. Randy Orton right now is still has his best years ahead of him. I swear to God, this guy can go on forever. But yeah, that's the other champion versus champion match at Survivor Series of this year. I expect that match to live up to the hype. The one match I remember between those two that happened that I'm gonna remember for good is the 2014 SummerSlam where we saw these two go one on one for the first time ever. As good as that match that was that night, I expect it to be the same result when these two go head to head at this year's Survivor Series. proving who is the better man, and which brand will have the bragging rights that night. Of course, we're going to see traditional Survivor elimination match between the men's and the women's. It's going to be really, really good, interesting to see what teams are going to be formed here for both brands, whether it's going to be the men's team or the women's team. But either way, it's going to be a really good show to watch. Interesting because you don't know which way it's going to go. We could have some surprises that night, but I can tell you this much: whoever survives between either brand of Raw or SmackDown, frankly, deserves it because both teams are going to bring it hard. They're going to bring it with everything they got. Pretty amazing. I cannot wait personally for the Survivor Series. We'll be back after this. And I am back to talk about another segment here about an infamous match, and keyword infamous because this is pretty freaking historic. As a wrestling fan, if you're gonna talk about an infamous match, it has to be something big, monumental, a match that is still talked about to this very day. And I'm pretty sure fans out there listening to this right now, you already know which match I'm gonna talk about. Is the match from the 1998 King of the Ring between Mankind and The Undertaker. We saw a lot in this matchup. I remember sitting at home as a kid watching this match from start to finish. I would have to say this is probably the first violent match, as violent as it can be. Imagine this match was held inside the Hell in a Cell. Wow. Me just thinking about gives me goosebumps. It gives me the chills, just like reminiscing about what happened to Mick Foley and his body that night. Oh man, poor Mick Foley, poor Mick Foley. But uh, as big as the rivalry was, that lasted over 2 years. It had to be settled inside the cell. It really had to be. Mankind makes his way to the ring first with a steel chair. Mind you, we know what Mankind can do with the chair. That steel chair, that's his weapon. That is his weapon. Comes onto the ring. Looks at that ominous cell that's already been lowered down to the arena, to the floor of the arena. Coming inside, checking the ring, everything. Going outside, tossing that steel chair up on top of the cell. It has a roof on it. Mind you, that cell is 16 feet tall at the time. Now compared to the new one that's 20 feet tall right now, but 16 feet tall, that's still a lot to even dive down from. That's really big height. It really is. Mind you, he scales his way to the top of the cell. Knowing that, oh my God, is he wanting to start the match on top of the cell? Is he gonna go to that depth to, you know, beat the Undertaker once and for all on top of the cell? Mind you, Undertaker's music hits, the lights go out, the arena gets dark. Undertaker coming out with this amazing entrance, three explosions as he walks down the aisleway, stops and sees Mankind, who is daring him to come to the top of the cell. Mind you, we've never had a cell match. This is only the second cell match. The one from 1998, the previous year, where the first took place between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker himself at In Your House, Bad Blood. We are here dancing King of the Ring in the Igloo in Pittsburgh, PA on June 28th, 1998. And mind you, this cell, man, oh, I can imagine the people that were in attendance that night looking up at this thing and thinking, holy bleep, this thing is pretty damn big, you know? Undertaker's music stops. Undertaker takes off his entrance where it scales to the top of the cell itself. Mankind meeting Undertaker halfway, trying to punch Undertaker down when Undertaker's still trying to scale to the top of the cell. Luckily, Undertaker gets up there. Few rights and left are shown here. He's trying to get him up there. Mankind uses a steel chair. Hits Undertaker back with a steel chair. No, not enough. Undertaker comes swinging back left and right. And this is the moment where things take a left turn. or turn for the worse, people might say. We saw the Undertaker just throw Mankind off the top of the cell, crashing through the Spanish announce table. As a kid, I'm looking at this. I'm like, he's dead. He's got to be dead. Like, I couldn't say it. I couldn't find the words. I'm thinking in my head, he's dead. He is dead. He can't survive that. Me being a kid, not knowing that much big words, but I was thinking, like, but I was speechless at the same time. Cause I just saw a human being, a man, tossed 16 feet from the top of the stage to the floor through the Spanish announce table. I couldn't help but put my hands in front of my eyes and my face and looking at my mother, saying, "Is it over? Is he okay? Is it over? What if he didn't survive? He Undertaker killed him, you know." And then I'm hearing, one of my favorite commentators of all time, Jim Ross, goes by name JR, thinking, "Will somebody stop the damn match? Enough is enough. As God is my witness, he is broken in half." Quote unquote. Those were the words of Jim Ross that night. I can still remember those words as if I were not watching the match and hearing his voice in my head in the background. Like, holy crap, this is pretty unserious. Like this guy is hurt. Mick Foley is hurt. His real name is Mick Foley, born out of Long Island, New York. His wrestling name, or at least his persona, out of the three faces of Foley, one of them being Mankind. And I couldn't just help but think, like, holy crap, is the match over? Is he dead? Like, what is going on? You know? Jesus Christ. I think my heart was pounding that a lot that night too. Next, we see officials come down there checking on Mankind. We even saw the owner of the company himself, Mr. Man, coming out there, and we had to, mind you, Undertaker's still on top of the cell. He's looking down at Mankind's broken body, crash through the announce table. We see EMT paramedics with a stretcher wheeling it out here, trying to get Mankind to safety, get into the back. Mind you, had to raise the cell because that cell's too damn big for the ring and even for the outside of the ring area too, for even the paramedics and EMTs to get through to get to Mankind that night. Saw Mankind put on the stretcher. We see them wheeling the stretcher out of there, up the aisleway. Next thing you know, they stop. They stop dead ass in the middle of the aisleway. Mankind gets up and he has this huge smile on his face, this big smile. And I'm thinking, why is he smiling? Isn't he hurt? Like, he needs to go to the hospital. He needs medical attention. He has a big smile on his face. And mind you, this guy is deranged. He'll do anything to win the match. So we see him climbing back to the top of the cell. The Undertaker is still on top of the cell. And my God, the Undertaker's got Mankind. I'm thinking, oh my God, he's gonna do it again. He's gonna do it again. He's going to do it again. And this was probably by far worse. In a different maneuver, he chokeslams Mankind through the roof of the cell, right into the middle of the ring. And mind you, I did not notice this before. There's still chairs still on top of that cell. And mind you, when I heard this on a special documentary of the Mick Foley, of Mick Foley on the WWE Network, when that chair came down, it smacked him in the face, along with that chokeslam through the cell to the ring. The chair coming down at him and knocking him in the mouth and knocked his tooth. That evidently you see that photo of him smiling. That tooth got stuck up his nose. That is probably the most violent thing I've ever seen in my life up to that point. This is pretty damn. This is some crazy stuff here. Like, I think I'm thinking in my head, yeah, Taker is taking this maybe a bit too far. Maybe a bit too far here, you know? So, Jesus Christ, like, wow. Okay, if that fall, that 16-foot toss from the cell, thrown off the cell, whatever you want to call it, didn't kill him, this would, you know? Mankind lying motionlessly in the ring, officials coming to check on him. The Undertaker's climbing down from the cell in the middle of where that broken spot is, getting in the cage, knocking out all the officials. Even WWE legend and Hall of Famer Terry Funk, who was an official that night, also. Mind you, this, people know that Mick Foley and Terry Funk are best friends in real life too. Really great friends, close friends. Even at one time, they were the WWE Tag Team Champions in the year of '98. So Undertaker gives Terry Funk a choke slam. I, I kid you not. When I heard Jim Ross comment that Terry Funk's shoes were off in the middle of the ring, and I could, hear Jim say in the background, it looked like he chose him out of his shoes. Like, oh man, that's even though it was a serious match, but that's probably the only funny thing that happened when Jim Ross said that in the background. Okay, moving on. We see Mankind try to. I don't know how the heck in this guy is moving. Try to unleash some fury of offenses back and forth with the Undertaker, trying to come back. Oh man, even at one point, power drive the Undertaker, and so surreal. Like, how is this guy fighting? He's smiling, has a tooth stuck up his nose, he's bleeding from the mouth. He must have internal injuries. Must. Keyword must have internal injuries. And he's fighting like he's enjoying it. He's liking it. I'm thinking, this human being is indestructible, like the Terminator. He can't be stopped. In that moment where he went underneath the ring, take some kind of a blue bag that looked like maybe some powder, some dust, some sand in it. But that moment where he flips the bag upside down and out comes thousands and thousands of thumbtacks. Holy crap, what is worse than this Hell in a Cell and thumbtacks? Holy bleep. Like, this is surreal. This is crazy. Oh my god, he's gonna try to throw an intake into the thumbtacks. That's what I'm thinking. You know? He leashes the mandible claw on the Undertaker, try to get him. Undertaker has, Mankind's 300-pound body on his back, carry him in a piggyback ride position, going inching closer and closer to those thumbtacks. And what do you know? Back drops Mankind into the thumbtacks. Mankind goes rolling into the thumbtacks. Oh man, oh. Just thinking about that makes me, just feel those pins and sharp edges of the thumbtacks just digging into your back and your body. Holy crap. That is that's some illegal stuff. And, he looked like a human pincushion. Basically, that night. He looked like a human pincushion. I kid you not. This was so damn surreal. Like, any wrestling fans that have never seen that before, go on the network, go to the 1980 King of the Ring and watch this match. Yeah, you're gonna wanna probably take your eyes off. You're gonna want to take your eyes off some parts of this match, but you're not gonna want to look away too much, so you don't miss what's gonna happen. Then Undertaker picks up Mankind again and chokeslams them back into the tacks, making sure all those tacks are stuck into Mankind's body. Pretty damn crazy. Holy crap! What's gonna happen next? I'm thinking like, okay, Undertaker just beat him, get the match over with. This is too much. What else gonna happen? He flips Mankind into the power drive position for a tombstone power drive, getting into 1, 2, 3, and winning his first Hell in a Cell match against Mankind. And I think I was thinking God that match was over. I was thinking God that match was over. That had to be one of the most violent matches I've ever seen. Though to this day, I consider it the most violent match I've ever seen. And that was just Hell in a Cell with thumbtacks in it and steel chairs. Like, that was crazy. And it's like every chance I get, I can watch this match over and over and over and over and over again and still act like it's my first time watching the match. Me being the age of 27, like, And mind you, I was only 5 years old watching that match. It was 22 years ago. Pretty damn surreal. Like I really could watch that match over and over again and act like it's my first time watching it. That's how pretty damn surreal this match is. I couldn't believe it. I think Mankind was okay after that match. Yeah, Undertaker maybe suffered a couple injuries too, but thank God he was okay too. Mankind got the worst for wear at that matchup. So yeah, pretty damn surreal. Man, well, to me, that was my most infamous match that I can recall off the top of my head that would stay forever in my heart from time to time. And, probably going to watch that match again sooner or later. But, you know, yes. Well, any guys you want to talk about first time matches, the top matches you have, swing by me. You can comment below on a segment. And we'll be right back after this message. All right, I am back with another segment about rumored innuendos slash wrestling news that's been swirling around nowadays. Now, I previously noted that WWE has made this whole Thunderdome experience virtual for the fans to actually feel like they are part of the event, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, or pay-per-view, by via virtual from their computers, smartphones, or whatever technology that they could view their camera of themselves appearing in the audience or somewhat virtual audience at any WWE televised event, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, or pay-per-view. Well, earlier this week, we had noted that WWE or WWE and the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida, that extended their Thunderdome contract through the month of November. With the NBA basketball team, Orlando Magic possibly needing the arena in late December for the start of the 2021 season, Twitter account at WrestleRose is now open reporting the following, and this took place on October 26th of 2020, stated that Thunderdome update sources state that it'll be set to leave the Amway Center by the 1st of December. Arenas in North Carolina, Texas, Illinois were discussed over the weekend. WWE needs to find a spot where no teams play, plus able to house and weight are the power requirements of the setup. WrestleVotes will respond. A newer arena is preferred as the weight of the Thunderdome won't work with older buildings. Also, a major travel hub is needed as talent will be able to fly in and out of each week. It's not the easiest combinations of things to find. Mind you, WWE has made a deal with Orlando at the beginning of September to hold all the events, even their pay-per-views, in the Amway Center as part of their WWE's newest creation, the Thunderdome. My opinion about this is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool setup. I like the way they have it. They have the virtual fans in the crowd on these big LED TV screens. It's pretty cool. WWE's finding a way. They're doing their very best to make the fan feel like they are a part of the event. Big a big shout out to WWE right there for at least trying to make things right with this whole COVID thing going on there. We had to suffer enough throughout the summer. Even WrestleMania that happened early this year at the WWE Performance Center, unfortunately, there were no fans there at all. It sucks. I still enjoyed the event, but it would have been a lot better if it was held in a stadium with 100,000 people, like it usually is. So hopefully within the next year or so, we'll be able to get fans back in the arenas and make it feel like winning once again. In the WWE. Then another piece of news is reported by John Alba, aka at John Alba on Twitter. Quote, I have received the amendment to the contract between the City of Orlando and WWE to hold the Thunderdome at the Amway Center. Officially, it runs through November 24th. So, at least in my opinion, at least WWE has extended their contract with the City of Orlando for the Amway Center to still hold the WWE's Thunderdome in the arena, at least until November 24th. Originally, originally the Thunderdome was supposed to be held through October 31st, Halloween, and then find a new location. They extended their deal, which is pretty cool, because I like the Thunderdome experience personally. So I'm glad they're keeping this for another month. But it makes you wonder, where are they going to go after November 24th? what arenas, maybe Illinois or Texas, that they could find to host them on, and not such an old arena, but a new arena where they can have the weight of the power and the whole setup of the Thunderdome experience. So it's really, really mind-boggling where WWE will go next with this whole thing. All right, let's see. Another piece of news is the Hell in a Cell production news itself. This is pretty interesting here. I read this, 2 days ago at night, that said that the Roman Reigns Jey Uso match produced by Michael Hayes himself, Michael P.S. Hayes of the Fabulous Freebirds. I've been a Michael Hayes fan all my life, even when he was part of that legendary trio, the Freebirds. You know, it's pretty cool. It's pretty damn cool him producing that matchup. Big credits that match. Two thumbs up for Michael Hayes that night. Next, the Drew McIntyre Randy Orton Hell in a Cell match was produced by Chris Parks, aka Abyss / Joseph Park. Now, for anybody that's not known of who Chris Parks is, he played the character The Abyss in Teenage Impact Wrestling for a very, very long time, and did a damn good one at that too, making Impact Wrestling and TNA's Impact Wrestling their residential monster. So big up for him producing that Drew McIntyre Randy match. 'Cause we saw a lot in the matchup. The most big spot we saw Randy or knocking Drew off the side of the cell, at least less than 16 feet when Drew McIntyre crashed into the table that night. Bad bump for Drew McIntyre to take, but he took like a champ and got back up and still attended to continue the matchup. Even though he had lost, I give props to Drew McIntyre for taking that bump and still being able to go too. Next, the Sasha Banks Bailey match was produced by TJ Wilson, aka Tyson Kidd, and Pat Buck. Tyson Kidd, the last graduate of the Stu Hart Dungeon. Tremendous performer in the ring. I actually miss him performing in the ring. He was pretty cool, especially when him and Cesaro were the tag team champions 5 years ago. That was probably some of his best work yet. So, for him to produce that matchup too, I hope I at least have a little glimpse of hope that we may see Tyson Kidd back in the ring again. Hopefully, soon. Maybe vulnerable parents wouldn't hurt, you know? So, it's pretty cool. Another piece of news I actually want to share with you. This is kind of important here. It's the latest regarding the Raw's main event for WrestleMania 37. Possibly. This is just a rumor. It's possible. Nothing special yet because we still got at least 5 months between now and WrestleMania to build with us. But if you think about it, it kind of makes sense where WWE's going with this. Over the past few months, there have been now rumors about Edge facing Randy Orton in a rubber match with WrestleMania 37, with the WWE title being on the line. Let me pause right there. Mind you, these two have already had two amazing, amazing matches this year in 2020. The first one with Edge defeating Randy Orton, that last man standing match, that brutal last man standing match, on top of a semi truck at WrestleMania 37 in the PC. Second, they had what was quoted the greatest wrestling match of all time at Backlash 2000, also in the PC Center, where Randy Orton blatantly, well, yes, blatantly had to cheat to beat Edge that night, making the series between them tied 1-1. Edge suffered a torn Achilles heel that night and was able to continue that feud passed on. So, for them to possibly set up a rubber match between these two men at WrestleMania 37 in the main event, evolving to the championship, that's a pretty big deal. I just hope Edge recovers from injury in time, speeds up the process because I love it. I'm a big Edge fan myself. For all his accomplishments, I hope Edge come back and secretly I hope he kick Reigns' ass. But it's WWE. Anything can happen. Anything can happen whatsoever. So let me continue about this news here. There was even also talk about Orton facing Edge at the Royal Rumble event, but that could depend on when Edge is recovered from his torn triceps injury. Now that Randy has won the WWE Championship from Drew McIntyre, the belief is that there are still plans for Orton to face Edge in the title, and with Dave Meltzer of F4W Online, noting the following at the Hounds on pay-per-view. And I quote, I certainly was given the impression tonight that Orton and Edge in the direction right now for the championship. That's a quote, courtesy of WrestlingNews.com. The impression. That's something. That's something. That's something. But it's just impression. I could quote Dave Meltzer on being a big wrestling critic, which he is. But I'll admit though, most of the stuff he does say are somewhat true, more than false. So if he's right about this, and he is, then I would give a rounding standing applause solely for me to him. Dave Meltzer is considered a wrestling fanatic, a wrestling genius, you know. So yeah, who knows? If he could be right about that, if he could be right, I again will give him all the praise in the world. Really, just give him all the praise in the world. Another piece of news I like to say that let's see. Last SmackDown had been on Fox since its inception of last year, moving to Fox and Fox Sports. Only because of the World Series happening this past Friday on October 23rd, SmackDown had to be viewed on FS1. Well, this piece of news right here that last Friday's episode of SmackDown, which aired on FS1 instead of Fox due to the World Series, drew 881,000 viewers at a 0.25 1849 demo rating. Last year's SmackDown on FS1 drew 888,000 viewers with a 0.27 18-49 demograph. So it's pretty surreal. It pretty is. And it makes you think, has SmackDown's viewership gone down? Because a year prior to being FS1, it was a little bit higher than this year. But then again, last year was the start of SmackDown being on Fox with the draft and everything that's happened. So it makes it interesting to see like if SmackDown needs to plan more better things throughout the show and be able to like just throw more out there as much as possible and seeing the fans will grab onto it, gravitate towards it, catch on to it, believe in it, eat it all up, and be full when the show finishes. In an interview with SI.com, Jeff Hardy commented on current WWE goals, and I quote, between now and the year 2024, I want to be WWE Champion and Wrestle Champion, one time apiece. And maybe even WrestleMania one of those years. That's the goal I just set for myself. Faith over fear. Everything will be good. Now, I the Jeff Hardy's had a long storied career. He has battled a lot of demons. And unfortunately, one of those demons was addiction. As a human growing up, once you get addicted to that stuff, it's really hard to break off. Thank God I never gone down the road, never will go down that road. But yeah, for his story in his life is he's overcome it all. As much as much shit he's put himself through, he has overcome it all just to make it back here to what is considered his home, the WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment. So it's pretty surreal that these life goals of Jeff Hardy, in my opinion, are very important. I really hope, as a fan favorite of Jeff Hardy, a very huge fan favorite from even when he made his debut back in 1993 in the World Wrestling Federation that year. I really hope Jeff Hardy one day is becoming Universal Champion or WWE Champion, even one time in peace. Or very importantly, main events WrestleMania. Hopefully, it comes true one day. I will be all for it. I would be all for it whatsoever. So hopefully, cross our fingers and hopefully, Jeff Hardy can really, really just pull it off there. Most times he does crash and burn these crazy, death-defying matches, but I think the purpose of that just to give the fans something to go home to and talk about. Which for Jeff Hardy to sacrifice his body in a lot of those matches, and I mean a lot of sacrifice in those matches. I really give him the highest praise of anybody taking his body to the limit. Pretty damn surreal. Another piece of notice, the Backstage Brawl Facebook page called the Backstage Brawl lists the 5 greatest SmackDown superstars of all time. Do you agree with this list? Let's run down the list, shall we? Number 5, Eddie Guerrero, former WWE champion Eddie Guerrero, who's had a legendary stellar career on SmackDown, even one time being WWE champion by defeating Brock Lesnar at the No Way Out 2004 pay-per-view event. And fans still talk about this game being the fans still talks about to this very day being one of the greatest moments in WWE's history. Number 4, the rated R superstar Edge. Edge's stellar career of being the 11-time world champion, 9-time tag team champion, former United States champion, multiple time Intercontinental champion, Rumble winner, and a King of the Ring winner. Mind you, there's nobody that persevered and dominated SmackDown for years than Edge. So it's pretty cool, if we could ever see Edge on SmackDown one more time to make more history with us. It gives us those nice, profound memories. Number 3, he is the face that runs the place. In my mind, one of the greatest in-ring performers of all time since Shawn Michaels, the phenomenal AJ Styles. I can say a lot about AJ Styles. He spent most of his career in Impact Wrestling, making a name for himself in New Japan and coming to WWE, and in very short months becoming the WWE champion and defeating John Cena and making himself really what he is, and that's phenomenal. Number 2, my favorite superstar of all time, The Undertaker. Man, Undertaker's career on SmackDown is freaking legendary. He has done it all. He has been everybody. He has laid those souls to rest. He keeps digging the holes and pitting them 6 feet under. And number 1, I think we can't really argue with this one. This is the well-deserved number 1 spot. The Rock. The Rock show is SmackDown. I don't know if people may notice that much, but The Rock is the reason why the word SmackDown is in the Webster's dictionary since its inception in 1999, when The Rock named SmackDown his show. SmackDown debuted on August 26, 1999, which saw the first ever main event between The Rock and Triple H for the WWE Championship, with Shawn Michaels as a special guest referee that night. The Rock may not win the match that night, but he indeed made sure that SmackDown was his show. Pretty damn cool, to say the least. Pretty damn cool. Now, there's other piece of news, one piece of news I want to share with you guys right here that I found to be most compelling, very most compelling at all, is that night, a fan on approval by David R. Barker. Hopefully I can mention this guy's name without getting in trouble. David R. Barker on Facebook had a pending post that said, "The Fiend vs. Seth Rollins from the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view from last year is the perfect example of something great being declared bad by the wider wrestling community, simply because it wasn't what they wanted. They wanted the Fiend to become a Universal Champion, which didn't make any sense for the character. He didn't want the belt with the logo on it if he wanted to break Rollins. He wanted Rollins to embrace his dark side, the Messiah. The match was booked perfectly. It showed the supernatural power of the Fiend, causing Seth Rollins to snap and try to kill the monstrous, which was what the Fiend really wanted. It led to the stoppage finish, the inevitable setup for Rollins' excellent heel turn and becoming the Monday Night Messiah. Of course, the Fiend did eventually win the Universal Championship because the fans' backlash to the Hell in a Cell finish, which led to what I personally think hurt the character beyond repair. His clean loose at the hands of the aging legend, Bill Goldberg. The more I thought about these comments of this guy saying what this match really was and the way it was booked and how the outcome affected both Seth Rollins and the Fiend characters on the WCW, I have no choice but to agree with them. I really have no choice but to agree with them. And for the same reason why. There's a reason why WWE's booked certain matches the way it should happen, the way it should finish from start to finish. The fans may not agree with it, 100%. We are our critics. We are our wrestling critics. We're not going to agree with how every match is supposed to be finished or should be done this way or that way or the third. We just got to sit there and enjoy it and see what happens. There's a reason why WWE has these storylines that they want to continue and prolong the inevitable, no matter what happens, what the outcome is. So for this guy to say, in his opinion, how the match was booked and how the way that it affected both characters at the end, and to bring out Seth Rollins' monstrous heel side, I gotta agree with it, you know, because I thought about this. This could have went down a different way. We could have had either Seth Rollins beat the Fiend clean straight up and continue championship, hurting and devaluing the Fiend character of Bray Wyatt, or we could have had the Fiend easily run over Rollins throughout the entire match, become the Universal Championship, just like that in a blink of an eye. In which Seth Rollins probably could not come back from that if he had lost to the Fiend inside Hell in a Cell, especially for a clean finish. So unbelievable. So for Seth Rollins to fight and really try to kill the Fiend that night and having the referee stop the match, I think it's pretty surreal. I think that's probably a smart finish right there. Because evidently the Fiend will eventually win the championship on the WWE Crown Jewel pay-per-view that took place on Halloween, October 31st of 2019 in Saudi Arabia. In that crazy, brutal, false count anywhere match that would take place that night in the main event of WWE's Crown Jewel. That's all the news I have for today, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to my podcast, my debut episode. We're now at the end of this episode, and which I think this turned out pretty damn good. It really did. Like, I'm getting into the motion. I feel it. I feel like sense of urgency to continue talking on for another hour or so, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna spill all the beans right away. You know, you just got to wait until next week. Sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it at all. Do not force my hand. Do not force my hand. Just kidding with you guys. But yeah, I think, you know, they're pretty good. You know, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. But before you guys leave, I want to leave you with something. And that's, drumroll please, the summary of my next week's episode. We're going to talk about the 5 greatest Survivor Series matches of all time. It's not just going to be really pit. I'm going to be asking around different wrestling fans about the top 5 best wrestling matches of all time. And I'm just going to randomly put them all in one category and pick them out one by one. Pluck them from obscurity. So that is next week on Gotta Hav'Heart Wrestling. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I have fun doing this debut episode. We're going to continue down this long road. We're going to have maybe some bumps here and there along the road. But we're going to have fun. We're going to dive into this head first. And we're going to see where we go with this. We're going to take this big. We're going to do this really big time. And also next week, I wanted to talk about mentioning Undertaker's debut from the 1990 Survivor Series that took place subsequently on November 22nd, 1990 from Hartford, Connecticut. All right. Thank you guys for listening to my podcast, my debut episode. I have fun doing this. See you guys next week. We'll be talking about the top 5 greatest matches in Survivor Series history. And the Undertaker's debut for the 1990 Survivor Series is scary. So scary. Have a nice Halloween, guys. Have a good week. See you next week.